My name is Marianne Tierney, and I am the off-campus living advisor here at Queen's. So it is really nice to be able to join you today. And as Amanda mentioned, we'll do questions at the end. So we're going to just chat a little bit about navigating the Kingston rental market. So as the off-campus living advisor, I do help all Queen's students. So I meet with students about where and how to look for a rental property. I help students understand the Residential Tenancies Act and their rights as a tenant. I am unable to provide legal advice, but I can provide support with rental applications as well as lease reviews. And I also offer tips on how to live with others, as well as landlord and housemate conflict resolution. So if we could actually turn to the chat for a moment, I just have a question. So if you are comfortable sharing, what have you heard about Kingston housing, housing searches, landlords, etc.? Okay, I don't think I see anything yet. That's okay if you don't want to share, but if you do, that would be appreciative. Maybe you haven't started your search yet, or you don't know where to start. Okay, excellent. Queens Community Housing page is a good start. Don't have an idea yet. Haven't heard a lot. As expensive as Toronto, hard to find housing. Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. So we'll continue on. There'll be a few more opportunities to share as we go. So common terminology. So as you start navigating the Kingston rental market, I did want to review some common terms that you really do need to be aware of. So a lease agreement is a contract between you and the landlord. It's a commitment. Leases are usually a 1-year lease term, and the lease sets out the rules of the tenancy. It is extremely important to note that with a fixed term lease, if you are planning to move out at the end of the fixed term, the date stated on the lease, you still need to give a minimum 60 days notice prior to the end date of the lease that you do want to leave. If you want to stay, no notice is required, as all fixed term leases do go month to month, and you are not required to sign a new lease. When you are then ready to move out, you are required to provide a minimum 60-day notice. So an application, so to rent an apartment, room, or house in Ontario, landlords will generally ask for some combination of a rental application, a credit check, verification that you are a student, as well as references. And an application is essentially a summary form of a renter's information and provides relevant information about the possible tenant to the landlord. So when you are interested in a property, you will need to complete an application. And this is common for most landlords and property management companies, but it is important to know that each process may be a little bit different. So a deposit is when your application has been accepted, you've viewed the property in person or virtually, and you have received a lease, you will then be asked to pay a deposit. The deposit is always the last month's rent and will be applied to the last month's rent only. It is important to note that a security deposit or damage deposit is illegal in Ontario. If a tenant damages something and the landlord wants them to replace or fix it, there is a different process for how that's resolved. And it is illegal for landlords to ask for a security or damage deposit in advance. So a guarantor or cosigner is a person who agrees to take responsibility for your rent if you are unable to pay it. Some landlords will ask for a guarantor, so that's just something to be prepared for and to keep in mind. So tenant rights and responsibilities, short term is the RTA, and it's legislation within the province of Ontario that protects tenants and sets out rules for both the landlord and tenants to follow. There are some exceptions, which I will touch on a little bit later. Apartment, house, condo are often the types of rentals you will come across. Utilities means heat, electricity, and water. Electricity is often referred to here in Ontario as hydro. There are monthly charges, and it is important to note that depending on the type of rental property, they may be included in your monthly rental rate, but they also may not be and could be extra costs that you do need to account for. And eviction is a formal procedure that is managed by the Landlord Tenant Board of Ontario. Actually, every landlord must follow a series of steps to legally evict a tenant. So if a landlord verbally asks a tenant to leave or writes them an email or a note asking them to leave, this does not begin the formal eviction process. And bylaws, these are city municipal laws, different from provincial and federal laws. An example could be property standards or the noise bylaw. So these are just some common terms that might come up. It will come up throughout the presentation, and it will likely come up as you navigate the Kingston rental market. So the rental process, it is really important to know your rights from start to finish, and what the process looks like. So you want to make sure that you have your documentation ready, set up property viewings in advance, and we'll chat about virtual showings and how to navigate that process in a little bit. Once you do receive a lease, you want to be sure to review it and understand it before signing it. And once your lease is signed and your deposit, the last month's rent, is paid, pretty much that process is done and you're just waiting then to move in. So you need to kind of determine your living situation and what type of living situation works best for you and your budget. So if you are living with others, you need to take the time to have an honest conversation with one another. You need to be able to live together. So it is really important that you are talking about your definition of clean versus theirs, how will chores be handled, etc. Right? Some students like living alone, but some students, depending on your budget, it is cheaper to live with others. So it is super important to note that once your lease is signed, you can't get out of it. A lease is a legal binding contract. If moving in with people who already have a house and they were looking for another housemate, be sure to meet them all before you make an agreement. Kingston is expensive, so please just be aware of that. The perfect property does not exist, so please give yourself as many options as possible and use all of your resources when searching for a rental. So everyone's needs are different, but a main common need is the proximity to campus as well as budget. The more amenities you need or you want, the more expensive it will likely be. It is also important to note that the closer you are to downtown or to campus, also likely more expensive. If you are willing to have a bit of a walk or take Kingston Transit, as we do have a city bus service here, this may help you expand your search. Be prepared for the possible need of providing a guarantor or cosigner. Again, have your documentation ready and note that it is very common to be asked for confirmation of enrollment. So if asked for this, you can get it through your Solus account. It is also important to know your tenant rights and just overall be prepared and ready. So everyone does have a different definition of cleaning. So again, if you are living with other people, it is really important that this is discussed in advance, and I can't stress that enough. So how are chores being managed? If utilities are not included in the rental property, how are these getting paid? Who will set up the account and take the lead to notify when payment is due? Chatting about guests and respecting each other's space is also really important. We do have a housemate agreement form on our website that students can use to open the line of communication on many of these topics. So you're more than welcome to check that resource out. It is also really important to understand joint and several liability. So this is when you all sign the lease together, you are all financially responsible. The lease doesn't say that you are each paying for a room. It states that you are renting a property. So this is also why it's extremely important to pick the right people to live with. So I do just want to mention some common problems between housemates. Um, Again, cleanliness is a big one, and that's kind of the major one that I do see here in the office, or one person always being the one to do all the cleaning. So again, we do recommend chatting about putting together a chore schedule and working together to ensure it is kept up. Excessive noise and parties is sometimes also a concern. We do all come to university for different reasons. So again, it is extremely important to interview housemates in advance and find people that you will be compatible to live with. And again, for utilities, you are unable to set up a group account. So one person needs to set up the account and collect the money each month and ensure the bill is paid. So you do want to make sure you're chatting about common possible problems in advance, and how you will navigate this is really important. So open and calm communication is key and strongly recommended. So housing pricing in Kingston. So navigating the Kingston rental market can be challenging. Canada is in a housing crisis, and unfortunately, Kingston is not super affordable. Lots of people are moving here, and currently Kingston does have the lowest vacancy rate of rentals in Ontario. So a healthy vacancy rate is actually 3.8%, and currently Kingston is 0.8%. So as a result, rental prices do go up. So as you can see from the slide, this is just kind of a ballpark figure, some examples, um, kind of what to expect in terms of pricing. So if you're looking for a room in a shared home, typically with a family or with other student housemates where you're sharing bathroom and kitchen and living spaces, you are looking at approximately $750 Canadian to $1,200 Canadian. If you're looking for a one bedroom apartment or a bachelor, that ranges anywhere from 1,400 Canadian to 2,400 Canadian and upwards. Two bedrooms can range from 1,500 to $2,400 Canadian and upward. So again, these prices are based on a variety of factors. Living with others is more affordable, and the closer you are to campus or downtown, again, usually the more expensive it is. So that I just mentioned that so that you keep that in mind. It's also really important to note that Kingston may be more expensive than people sometimes realize. So what determines rental costs? So it is also important to note that landlord mindset changes when we get closer to campus. Landlords are thinking per room. The farther from campus tends to be, again, less expensive. More amenities typically means more expensive. You also need to consider other costs than just rent, right? So things I mentioned about utilities, internet is typically not included. If you have a cell phone bill, tenant insurance, things like that are all extra. A lot of people do expect apartments to be furnished in Ontario, specifically Kingston. That's extremely rare. So you would also need to budget for furniture. Now, there are the odd place that may be furnished, but again, it's just not as common. So just keep that in mind as you're doing your search. Tenant insurance is sometimes required and is approximately $20 to $30 a month. If it is not required by the landlord or indicated in your lease as a mandatory item that you need to get, it is still recommended that you do get it. Okay, so to prepare for a showing, you want to ensure that you've researched the landlord, that you know the application process of the particular landlord, and have all of your documentation ready. You want to prepare your questions in advance. If you're not sure what to ask, you're more than welcome to reach out to our office for some standard questions that you should be asking during a showing. I also believe these questions are also available on our website in our housing resource package, but you're also welcome to email and I can always send those your way. Don't rush. Please be efficient in your research and do your due diligence. You also want to make sure you're being professional and polite because you want to be seen as the most suitable tenant. So what to look for during a showing? So a showing is when you view the property before signing a lease or before making a commitment to it. So it is extremely important to view the property prior to sending any money or before signing a lease. So I can't stress that enough. Please never send money before viewing the property or before signing a lease. A showing is an opportunity for the landlord to sell you on the property. You want to check, like, does it appear to be well taken care of? You may have seen the rat go across my screen there a moment ago. So I just want to mention that all major cities in North America, it wasn't a real rat, but all major cities in North America have rats and mice. They aren't all over the place, but if properties aren't taken care of, then you might see them or signs that they are there. So broken windows, water stains on the ceiling are signs that the landlord doesn't take care of the property, right? And then that's a decision for you to decide if you want to live there or not. You want to look for mouse traps, mouse rat dirt. If you see signs of this, again, there are likely some issues with the property. If it's possible, you want to talk to the current tenants. Why are they leaving? Are there issues with the house? And ask them what the landlord is like. Is the landlord responsive to maintenance requests? And talking to current tenants is typically only possible when you're doing an in-person showing, because lots of times during the school year, if you're going to view a property, the current tenants are already living there or still there. So it makes it a little bit easier. When you're doing like a remote showing or virtual showing, you can ask the landlord if they can put you into contact with the current tenants. But please keep in mind that the landlord actually is not obligated to do this, and there are privacy concerns as well. So it just may also not be possible. So alternatives to in-person showings. So in-person showings are always the preferred method. But I understand, I believe majority of students on the call today are either out of province or I believe out of country. So in person is not possible. So a virtual showing is actually the next best thing. And it is extremely important to note that a virtual showing is not a video posted online or received via email. Okay, it's very much like right now, our conversation. I can see many of you because you have your cameras on. I have my camera on. If I wanted to, I could open my office door. I could take my computer for a walk and show you the whole building, right? That's the face-to-face interaction that you want during a virtual showing. So a virtual showing or a virtual walkthrough can be done through FaceTime or a similar app. You would treat the virtual as an in-person. All right. So if possible, you'd want to use a larger screen, a tablet or a laptop as opposed to your cell phone. If you only have the cell phone, that's fine. But if you do have the option of a larger screen, it just allows you to see things a little bit more clearly. The issue with a virtual viewing is that the landlord actually controls the viewing. So you really do need to take control back and ask them to, open that door or that drawer or please point the camera to the ceiling, etc. Right? You want to make sure you're getting almost as if you're there in person. You want to make sure you're getting that whole view of everything. Again, this is an opportunity for the landlord to sell you the property. So it is important that you ask lots of questions and that you get a good understanding if the property is what you want and if it will work for you. So I also suggest to students that you request that the landlord show you the outside of the property, right? So again, if you were in person, you're confirming that it exists. So again, keeping in mind that for virtual showings, that is a little bit more difficult, but you want to make sure they're showing you the outside of the property as well. This way you can see the street view and everything around it and compare it to Google Maps, right? So you want to compare, Google Maps is your friend. You want to be able to compare everything that you're seeing around the outside and the perimeter, street view and everything, so that you can compare it to all the information you have to then make a decision that the property does in fact exist. And the reason I stress that is because our next slide is talking about spotting and or avoiding fraud. So unfortunately, housing fraud and scams do happen. And this slide indicates some of the key things to identify if it is a scam. So scam artists are pretty good. They'll use fake email addresses. They may claim to work for Queens or real estate. They will use real pictures of Kingston properties, right? That's as great as the internet is, that's also the downfall. because access to things, right? Um, they offer to provide fake documents to verify ownership. And some things to look for is the landlord is pressuring for money to be sent, right? I think I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, you never send money or sign a lease before viewing the property. Okay, so if a landlord is pressuring you for money to be sent and you haven't even viewed it yet, walk away, please. Also, scammers will repeated pressure for money to be sent before signing a lease or before viewing a property. They'll use sayings like, I have others that will rent without viewing. That's okay. Let others then do that, right? Like walk away because you need to view the property again, whether that's in person or virtual prior to making a decision. Improper grammar and spelling mistakes are also very common with scammers, and the email name often does not match the name on the listing. So please just keep these things in mind. You do need to trust your gut, and if it seems too good to be true, it likely is. So please do walk away. So please educate yourself on rental scams as much as possible. International students and students out of province are often the ones typically scammed. Again, if it's too good to be true, chances are it is a scam. If you're not sure and you want a second opinion, again, I'm not perfect, but I can definitely look at the ad and try to help you make some decisions. Again, viewing the property always is the best approach, right? And if they're not going to let you view it virtually, walk away. The big takeaway here is that you should never send money without viewing the property in person or virtually. And you always view the property to confirm that the ad is legit and that the property does in fact exist. Always ask for a viewing. Can't stress it enough. Students often say to me, well, I'm not in Kingston, so I can't view it in person. So again, I understand that. And we do encourage students to see if you do know someone who's local to Kingston, who you do trust, you can ask them to go on your behalf. And again, if that's not possible, ask for a virtual showing. A virtual showing, again, is the next best thing. Many scammers will send a video and say that's a virtual showing, but a video, again, is not a virtual showing. So a video posted online or sent via email, that's just a video. It's not that real face-to-face interaction. So often students are asked for a deposit in order to view the property. So this is a big red flag. You do not need to give a deposit or send any money in order to view the property. And if asked, chances are it is a scam. And if it's not a scam, I would still recommend walking away because that's wrong and should not be asked. Do not send money in hopes of viewing the property. Again, don't send money in order to view a property or before viewing a property. And if the landlord gives you any excuses as to why they can't show you the property, again, red flag, likely a scam, and please walk away. So you do want to make sure you're doing your research on rental scams. If they ask for money in advance or say no to a viewing, again, walk away. If you see a post or an ad about an apartment, research the company or landlord. You can also call the company, like based on their information found on like the on online or through Google versus what's on the ad. You kind of want to compare both. Does the number on the ad match the Google search for the company online? If the numbers don't match, call the number from the company website, not from the ad. And typically, and the reason I'm saying that is because some scammers will use names of common property management companies, but upon further research, information like phone numbers and everything like that don't match up. So it's really important to do your research and your due diligence. Okay, so if I can ask you to go to the chat. So in Ontario, landlords can ask for a security or damage deposit, true or false? So if we could just take a moment, let me know what you think. I'm seeing a lot of false. Slash, I'm seeing all false. Okay. So yes, the answer is false. In Ontario, landlords can only ask for a rent deposit, which is 1 month's rent and will be applied to the last month's rent. So when to start your search? So to my understanding, many of you will be coming to Kingston very soon. So probably maybe mid to late August or even like for September. So I would suggest to start looking now. But be mindful that you currently may not see a lot of properties just yet for like a September 1st start um, being offered right now, and that not a lot of leases just yet for September. Um, Definitely, though, do start looking. Common leasing cycles in Kingston are May 1st to April 30th. So a lot of students may have signed leases for May. But then September 1st to August 31st is also common, and September 1st to April 30th, right? So typically leases are 1 year. Sometimes you might see an 8-month option, but typically it's 1 year. And in Ontario, with a fixed term lease, even with a specified end date, a tenant is required to give a minimum of 60 days notice prior to the end of the lease that they are planning to leave the rental unit. So it's important to keep that in mind because in situations where the tenants have not signed a new lease and their current lease is now month to month, they are also required to give a minimum of 60 days notice that they are leaving the rental. Okay. Um, and the reason I bring that up is because I'm having a lot of appointments right now with students, maybe even some of you, and students are very stressed that they haven't found a place yet. So the reason I bring that up is if you think about it, if you are looking for September 1st, yes, navigating the Kingston rental market is challenging, but it's also not impossible. And we're not at that minimum 60 days notice yet that tenants would have to give their notice if they are planning to move out. So definitely start looking every day, use all the resources available on our website through our resource document package. But please don't get discouraged yet and just keep all of this in mind. Again, most leases are typically 12 months and short-term leases are rare, but also not impossible. So you're welcome to check out our resource package available on our website. So things like an Ontario standard lease, there's a copy there for your reference. So you can familiarize yourself with it. I mentioned about questions to ask during a showing. Those questions are there as well. There's also a resource with different links and things that we do know that students are using to try to find rental ads. So that's all in there as well. And if you're ever not sure, please don't hesitate to email. Please make sure that you're using all websites and resources and check them all regularly. Please don't limit yourself, just to the Queen's Accommodation Listing Service or just to Facebook Marketplace or the Facebook group chats. There are tons of links for, different rental searching. So please make sure you're using all of them. There is not just one website that landlords do use. So again, our resource document will direct you to several options. So please don't limit yourself and use as many as possible. It is really important to regularly schedule time in your daily routine to review the listing links, setting aside maybe, 30 minutes or an hour a day to send emails, arrange viewings, things like that will make a big difference in your search. So I did want to quickly review subletting and lease assignments, as I know some of you may only be in Kingston for 4 months, as we do often get exchange students for like the September to December period. So to be honest, I don't think I've ever heard of a 4 or 6 month lease option. Typically, it is 12 months or 1 year, or sorry, 12 months, which is 1 year, or 8 months. And again, that is mainly due to the way that the Kingston rental market is right now, and landlords know that they can do that, so they do it. So a sublet, a true sublet, is when the tenant is leaving the unit for a set amount of time and has subleased the entire unit to another person. A lease assignment is when you take over someone else's lease. An occupant, in this type of situation, is not a sublet. It's often referred to as one, but an example is if it's a 3-bedroom house or apartment, 2 tenants are there, and one tenant maybe is going on exchange for the fall term, and you want to rent their room while they are away. This situation is often referred to as a sublet, but it's not a true sublet, and it's an occupancy situation. It's also important to note that an occupant has no rights under the Residential Tenancies Act. So at times, a sublet or a lease assignment is something you might be looking for, and it is best to treat that search just as you would a regular rental search process, right? You'd still likely have to do applications. You want to set up viewings, things like that. For those of you who might be coming to Queens for only one term, a sublet or an occupant situation may work best for you. Again, I'll be honest, it is often difficult to find a short-term rental here in Kingston from September to December. Most lease agreements, again, are for 1 year. And since the rental market is quite tight, rarely are landlords flexible. So it does take a lot of effort and energy and time. But some of the approaches that you can take are renting a room in a house of pre-existing tenants, where maybe one individual is going on exchange for the fall term. Renting a property for a full 8-month term, and then assigning the lease for the January to April or winter term. There's no guarantee that you would find someone for that option, but again, it's a possibility, potentially. You could connect with students coming to Queens for the winter term and signing a lease together. So one of you would be there half the time and the other half. And the most popular, actually, which can be a little bit expensive, unfortunately, but is sometimes the best approach for short term, is contacting local Airbnb properties to see if they would consider a short-term rental accommodation. So lots of students end up going that route. Again, if this is your situation and you have questions or you want to connect further, we can always chat about that. So submitting applications. So again, it's just important to note that landlords and property managers will typically ask interested tenants to submit an application. Each has their own process and may be submitted either through the website, which is more popular now, or some still do paper form. In addition to the application, you may be asked to submit proof of enrollment, student ID, a guarantor, and references. Again, you are not required to submit a deposit when applying to a property, and never send money without seeing the unit. Again, whether that's in person or virtual. So when it comes to lease agreements, please be sure to familiarize yourself with the Ontario Standard Lease. There is a copy, again, available on our website in our housing resource package. In Ontario, the landlord must use the Ontario Standard Lease. If they don't, that's your discretion if you still want to sign. But really, to me, that's a bit of a red flag. They should be using the Ontario Standard Lease. Landlords do have a right, even if they are using the Ontario Standard Lease, to attach additional terms. So always make sure that you are reading the lease as well as any additional terms and that you fully understand it. I do lease reviews. So if you're not sure of something, you're more than welcome to send it to me via email or book an appointment and we can review it together. I mentioned earlier on that I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice, but I can point out if there's anything stated that is not enforceable, or if I do notice any red flags or things that I think are a bit concerning. And then that way you can make the decision that's best for you. Landlords can only ask for the last month's rent as a deposit, Landlords can ask for a key deposit, which is typically $25 to $75 and only used if your key is lost or not returned. Okay, so back to the chat. You sign a 1-year lease agreement that expires on April 30th. If you don't sign a new lease, you need to move out on that date. Is that true or false? Okay, I see a true and I see a false. So let's see what the answer is. Oh, I'm seeing a lot more falses. Okay. So it is actually false. So again, all fixed term leases in Ontario go month to month. If you plan to move out at the end of your lease, you do need to provide a minimum of 60 days notice prior to the end of the lease date. If you plan to stay, no notice is required and your lease goes month to month. It is important to note that with joint leases, you are treated as one group. So one tenant can't just decide not to stay and the others go month to month. So it is really important when it comes to lease agreements that you are reading the lease agreement and understanding it before you sign it, right? I mentioned it's a legal binding document. This slide lists some of the common things that landlords will ask for, even though they should not be. Um, some landlords will ask for you to sign an N11 form when signing your lease. An N11 is an agreement to terminate at the end of the lease term. A landlord cannot require the tenant to sign an N11 agreement to end the tenancy as a condition of agreeing to rent a unit. And a tenant does not have to move out based on this agreement if the landlord required the tenant to sign it when the tenant agreed to rent the unit. So you might not come across that situation just yet, but N11s are quite common and are sometimes asked also for students to sign it in September, which you are not required to do. And if you ever have questions, you can reach out. Landlords can't just come into the rental unit. They are required to provide 24 hours notice. If there is flooding or something like that, then yes, they can enter without notice for emergency exceptions. Again, please ensure that you are reading and understanding your lease agreement before you sign it. If you don't understand it or have questions, please again, feel free to reach out to the office. I'm happy to review it and help you out as much as I can. It's also really important that you keep a copy of your lease. Okay. Often students will reach out to me or book appointments with questions. Sometimes it's difficult for me to answer some of the questions when I don't have the lease in front of me, and I'll ask for them to send me a copy. And then they let me know they don't have a copy. So it is really important that you keep a copy. You can always ask the landlord for a copy, but again, you really should be keeping a signed copy for yourself right from the very beginning. It is a legal binding document or contract. And that way too, you have it and you can reference it throughout your tenancy if you have questions or concerns or things like that, right? So I did previously mention the N11 on the previous slide. Um, this is an example of the form. Some landlords, again, will use this form to try and force you to move out by signing it. There are some exceptions if you are renting from Queens and community housing is your landlord, and that information is clearly stated on the form. But again, in the province of Ontario, leases do go month to month after the fixed term date. So some landlords do use the N11 as a tactic for you to sign a new lease as opposed to you not signing and going month to month. If ever you have questions, we can certainly chat more about that. So there are some exceptions to the RTA. And this is if you are renting with a direct family member of the landlord or owner. If you're living with or sharing a kitchen with a direct member of the family, or you're doing that room and board scenario where you're renting and living with the landlord. So in those situations, you do not have protections under the Residential Tenancies Act. And this means that if there are issues, either for like you as the tenant or your landlord, then you would need to go through small claims court and not through the landlord tenant board. So moving in, it is really important that you protect yourself. Our office has a move-in inspection form that you can use to help you with the process. It is really important that if the landlord is not with you during move-in day, that you do your own inspection of the entire unit before you move any of your belongings in. Okay, you want to make sure you're taking pictures of the property and note any damages. And you're not necessarily doing it so that the landlord will fix the damages. I mean, if they do, that's a bonus. But you're doing it so that you are not charged for them when you do leave the property, right? So you just want to, again, do your due diligence, document everything. If your lease states that you are required to get tenant insurance, then again, you are required to, and you do need to get it. And you need to be able to show proof that you have it to your landlord before getting your keys. I'm pretty sure I covered this, but again, it's a common problem in my world. So just a reminder to please, everyone, be a good roommate. If you are living with others, it is important that you do your part and you treat others the way you want to be treated. As mentioned previously, you want to have open communication right from the very beginning, and discuss how chores and things will be divided in advance. It's also important to chat about food. Are you going to share certain items or not? Again, students always tell me, oh, Marianne, that's corny. We get along great. We've been friends, forever, or things like that. And that's great. And I don't doubt it. But again, I do roommate conflicts all the time. I see this all the time. So it just, again, open communication. Please chat about all of these things. If you haven't done it before you sign a lease, before you move into the property, sit down and have those conversations to make sure you're, all respecting one another and being good roommates. So common notices from landlords. I'm not going to go into detail of all of them, but they are on the slide just to kind of draw your attention. If you ever do have questions about any of them, please don't hesitate to reach out. It is really important that you do your research and you educate yourself on your rights as a tenant, specifically in the province of Ontario. Depending where you come from, renting might be a little bit different. So again, educating yourself on the province of Ontario. It is also important that with any of the common notices that landlords may use, it is important to know that there is a process for each one of them. Okay, so a landlord, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, a landlord can't just kick you out or evict you, right? There's a process for that, and they would need to file with the landlord and tenant board. And the process to get a hearing to determine if they can evict you can take several months or maybe even longer. And really the main takeaway for any of these notices or common notices is that there is a process for every form and that the landlord does need to go through the landlord and tenant board. Okay. So if you could please answer yes or no to my chat question. You are a tenant, rent is paid on time and in full monthly, but you've broken one of the many terms and conditions your landlord has added to your lease. The landlord has found out and is threatening to evict you as soon as next week by changing the locks. Can the landlord do this? So if you don't mind sharing your thoughts. Okay, excellent. That means everyone's paying attention. I haven't bored you all yet. Perfect. Right, so the correct answer is no, they can't. They need to complete, again, the appropriate form and file with the landlord and tenant board, right? Again, the process can take several months to possibly a year. So I do want to mention that Kingston does have a property standards bylaw. If you are ever having issues with your landlord regarding some property maintenance or they won't fix something that is broken, there may be a way to force them to fix it by submitting a form complaint through property standards with the City of Kingston for review. If you do have issues with a maintenance or property deficiency, always the first step is to always notify your landlord or the property management company. Written correspondence is preferred. Notification by phone is acceptable. But you do always want to make sure that you're documenting all correspondence and that you're keeping all of that information for your records so that if it ever does go to complaint, you have your documentation. If your request is not resolved by talking to your landlord, then you can file a complaint with the City of Kingston. There is a property standards form on their website that you would then complete if it falls within the property standards codes. And if you're ever not sure if that's the right process for that type of complaint, depending on what the issue is, because again, property standards will be dealt with the city versus landlord tenant board. And there's other issues that would be dealt with through the landlord tenant board. So if you're ever not sure what the best process or which way you should go, again, you're more than welcome to reach out. We can chat and I can do my best to point you in the right direction. So I did just want to provide these two links for your reference. I am often asked about host families, especially for short-term stays. I don't have a whole lot of information. This is not really my area. But I am aware of Canada Homestay Network. It is the most common one. And Spaces Shared, I believe, is a bit newer. And I'm not overly confident on what the availability would be for Kingston partnerships. My office is not affiliated with either program, but I just provide these links because I have heard of them through other students. And if that's something you want to explore, you can certainly, like it's step by step through their website and they explain how to register and things like that. Again, I'm not sure if there are families in Kingston on the platforms looking for students to share space in their home, but I wanted to be sure to include it for your reference since I am sometimes asked. I know one of my summer projects is to do some more research and hopefully connect with both programs to learn more, and so I have a better understanding. So how to contact me. So definitely our chat today doesn't end it here. Amanda mentioned I also work all summer. I will have the odd vacation day here and there, but happy to help you, happy to try to support you as best as I can. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. ocla@queensu.ca is my email contact. Again, feel free to reach out with questions, and I'll always do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. I do also offer virtual appointments. And on the slide here is the QR code, how you can book one if you would like. I am booking a few weeks in advance right now. So please, again, you're more than welcome, but please just be mindful of that. But again, you're also welcome to email. So I will now stop showing my screen and hopefully we still have some time for questions. And thank you so much for having me.